No. I'm totally green as well. I know people watching the comments going, I want to dig baby dig or whatever. I'm totally pro all this kind of stuff, yeah, because you've got to look at different things. But I drove here on the M18 today. On the right-hand side, you've got a massive wind farm spinning around. I'm assuming making reasonably priced, clean green electricity. Clean's debatable because of how they're made. On the left-hand side, I've got Drax burning clean wood. That's classed as renewable. Drax power station, who I don't like, I've been thrown off a tour, yeah. They are burning clean wood from virgin trees that have been dragged from Canada and America in boats and trains to get here, and they're burning it and they're claiming that's carbon neutral and green. That's not. It's cleaner. There'll be arguments about this. It's cleaner to dig up British coal and burn it in a power station like Radcliffe than it is to get that wood to Drax and burn it. It's cleaner because there's no. You dig it out, you put it in, you burn it. You do the desulfurization. They've got they had at Radcliffe. It's as clean as coal gets at the minute. Drax are like digging it up, transporting it by muddy roads through massive forest to trains, loading it on trains with diesel cranes and stuff, dragging it to a dock. I think then they chip it into like coarse chips, drag it across the sea, get it to Immingham where they pelletise it into like pellets of like, looks like food, looks like car food, drag it to Drax, where they then grind it back up into a dust before blowing it into a furnace that's designed for coal. They put in, I think it's 15 times more wood than they did coal because its calorific value is lower. Then they tell us it's green. It's ridiculous. It's nuts. I mean, Drax is coming to an end. They've even every government sussed out that that's a big con. But they've been doing that for 15 years. But that's green. Burning new trees is green. But
just to
how wild is that?
Explain the gas side of it as well, Jamie, just for anyone who don't understand that, because some people would assume like it's a gas power station, but these little turbines that are all over the country,
peakers,
they're not really like that, are they? What?
So you got open circuit gas turbine. There ain't much of that. That's like standby generator stuff like that. That's basically a jet engine. It spins like a jet engine. You blow the hot air out. Yeah. The good thing about that is if you've got like there was for many years, Nottingham Hospital, the QMC had an open circuit gas turbine. So they bang in fuel, spin basically an Avon jet engine, same as in the Vulcan or I'm sure the flying ones in the Vulcan Concorde were aluminium. The one there was made out of steel, right, to really dumb it down. Then all that heat would get pissed out. But what they did was they caught it, because I don't know if you know, but hospitals need loads of heating and hot water. So they'd use it for that, so reasonably economical. On the bigger scale, like the one near me, Staithorpe, closed circuit gas turbine. You have a turbine, you fire gas into it, you ignite the gas, it spins the turbine, you then take all the heat out the back and run it through heat exchangers. You then make more steam that goes into a secondary turbine that spins the turbine. You basically get as much energy as you can out of it, yeah? Closed circuit gas turbines were what the dash for gas was in the 90s. The big dash for gas. We've got quite a few gas turbines, yeah? Reasonably economical. Then your renewables start coming on your scene. Your coal started shutting down, a few nukes went. And then what's happened is, I worked for a company that did this, so I know I can spot them off now, yeah? There was this thing called peakers. So peakers are like big, massive V12 engines, car engines, lorry engines basically, that would fill this room here, about the size of, I don't know, like Mercedes Sprinter vans. And they sit there in shipping containers. Once you've seen the chimneys, you'll spot them everywhere. If you just Google peaker engine and you look for one, you'll see them everywhere. Then they sit in places, they take gas in, and when there's a shortage of electricity, the peakers will say, we'll sell it at a silly price, which is what it normally is. They then fire up these reciprocating engines, turn turbines and make electricity to match the demand, because you can't store electricity, supplies got to meet demand. So there's like little blips, they'll kick in and do it, yeah? The unfortunate thing with peaking is, because it's very ad hoc here, then whenever, like, we want 10 kilowatts tonight for 10 megawatts tonight for an hour, the heat that's created, which is very, very useful, just all gets thrown away. So all the peaking sites I worked on, we had massive heat exchangers and we just blasted all that heat into the sky. Whereas say you had something like a big warehouse, they could buy some engines with generators on. They could then run those engines on gas that they buy permanently and generate their own, for cheaper than the jet engine version. They can generate their own electricity, sell some of that electricity to the grid, and they can take all the heat and heat the warehouse or production methods like that. So there are warehouses kicking around that have got gas peaking style engines that run off gas 24/7, take all the electric or use it or sell it back, take all the heat for hot water and stuff like that. And then there are even places that, you know, the exhaust from an engine, plants like that. That's a fact. So they take the big warehouses in, where is it? Netherlands and that. They have big, massive peaking engines. Electricity goes in, heat goes in, and the CO2 goes in, and the plants eat it. So those peaking engines, in a peaking form, highly inefficient ways of using gas to make electricity, loads of waste heat, but they can go all the way up to where I used to work. This might be secret, but I'll tell you anyway. We bought some second-hand engines from this could be commercially sensitive, but I don't care anymore. We bought some second-hand engines from the Center Parks in Germany, a Center Park style thing in Germany. And at that Center Parks, those engines ran 24/7 for most of their life, except for a service. And they used them for all the electricity, all the heating, all the cooling, and everything. And when we bought them, they look great because they've been well maintained, but they're absolutely buggers. but what they did was the most economical way of running something like Center Parks, like a Center Park style facility, CHP basically. But when we got them, we disregard all that, just made them run a generator and running very inefficiently. But this is what's keeping the grid propped up, you see. And it's very quiet. No one knows about peak engines. No one knows they're there, but there'll be some engines now, what they call short-term operating reserve. So some company somewhere, there are various ones I used to work for. Tonight they're going to go, right, is that the time? They're going to go between 5:30 and 6:30. We think we're about 10 gigawatts short on the grid in this area. Can you be ready to run? And they'll go, yeah, we'll be ready to run. Give us some money. And they'll go, we give you 20 grand to be ready to run. Okay. And then we'll pay you £500 a megawatt. So they're getting paid. When we was on store, which again, you can Google it, it's short-term offer reserve. I think it's going to be changing the name of it needs to now, but they'll go on the commodity market, they'll go, we need 20 megs tonight. And some will go, we'll be ready for 20 grand. And some will go, we'll be ready for 19. We'll be ready for 15. And if you play the game, because it's a market, in theory, you could have all your engines broken, but you could bid for it and hope it didn't need to run.
Wow. And
then what you could do is, people get angry now because they think about trade secrets, but you say you've got 20 meg of engines on your car park out here, and you've got a license to sell it, you could go, get in the bin auction, go, we'll do it for 20, we'll do it for 10, we could go, we'll do it for 5. And then we could go, well, we ain't got 5, they're all broken. So then we could get someone else to supply it. We could offer it off to someone else, like stock exchange. Go, you got 5 gigs? Yeah, we'll give you $2.5 grand for it, and we'll keep $2.5 grand. You could do that, or you could run the total risk that it weren't needed. But if it was needed, you get fined.
Yeah.
So like the market, the electricity market is absolutely wild.
Yeah.
It's like the old school. It's not done like that anymore. But the old school like trading floors. Basically that on computers.
Wow.
Like we want 20 gigawatts available. What's the damage? We'll do it for this. And it's like, well, if you have to run, what are you going to charge us for it? So like that day of the week, was it, the day we was on about earlier? Like there was a power station in Essex. It made £2 million in 2 hours. Like £2 million in 2 hours. But NESO said there was spare capacity on the grid. Well, my argument would be, if that power station in Essex, which is a real khaki one, like getting old, if they made £2 million in 2 hours, how was capacity available? Who was sitting there going, you know what I'm going to do? Even though I can make £2 million, I'm going to sit here and be the spare capacity. So the question is, they must be getting paid. Every power station in the UK must be getting paid that day to be ready. Or they'd be generating, wouldn't they? So it's like, that's when it gets wild. But yeah, peaking, paying curtailment payments to wind farms to not run, and paying peakers when there's not enough energy, that's why your bills are expensive. And the reason we're paying peakers to be available, and we're paying people to make really poor quality electricity that's not very economical, is because of renewables, unfortunately. Even though I'm pro it all, if you've got 10 meg of wind spinning around on the grid, somewhere you've got to have 10 meg of instantly available energy available. So they'll just go out and go, right, we're going to... So the wind farm will say, oh, we'll supply you with 10 meg today. And they go, great, we'll give you 50 grand for that. So this is just made up numbers, yeah? The wind farm then go, right, we're in contract now to supply 10 meg, and we've got 50 grand. Let's go to a peaker or a small generator and say, right, will you back us up for the day for 10? We think we won't have to run. And that, it's all on if, buts, maybes and handshakes. So every penny of renewable you're using, it's backed up financially by some jiggery pokery of geniuses making money. So it's always when you sell 10 gig to the grid, no matter where you then go and get it from, you've got to provide it, and that's why renewables are so expensive, because you've got to pay for all that.
This is all the part, you know, that you don't see unless you're in that, you know, it doesn't get spoken about, and you don't see any of that if you're not in that world. Like obviously you've been with your jobs, and obviously enthusiastically are as well. And it kind of, when you were describing those peakers and things like that, it's not exactly the same, but there's obviously a lot of chat around these miniature nuclear reactor things that
I knew it was coming.
That Rolls-Royce are on about, and I can quite well see a business being okay with having some sort of kind of gas engine on their site where they're getting all this stuff, but a mini nuclear power station,
this is another buzz thing, isn't it? Because it sounds totally feasible, doesn't it, to anyone that doesn't know what they're on about. I'm not saying don't know about, but what I'm saying is we know there are nuclear submarines trudging around in the depths, yeah, that don't need to be refueled for over 30 years. Yeah, that's a fact. Your average nuclear power station gets refueled every 2 years. 1.5 years, 2 years, yeah. The fact is, the uranium that's used in submarines is so enriched it lasts for 30 years. It's very, very highly enriched uranium, yeah. It is not in any way allowed to be used in any kind of civil use, yeah. You cannot get within 15 miles of a nuclear submarine, like up Scotland and stuff, because the uranium on them is so enriched. Barrow-in-Furness has got a big new, leave that, it's got a big new facility for testing them. It's got very, very thick walls if you look at it from the outside, because that uranium is so enriched. You cannot just plonk that in an industrial estate in Mansfield or Nottingham or Leeds. So what is actually not a bad concept, Rolls-Royce are developing so it's not Rolls-Royce ain't gone, oh, let's get a nuclear sub, take away the submarine bit and plonk it in an estate and use it. One, because that's run by a team of highly skilled Royal Navy nuclear engineers that need to constantly tweak it. It's not, you can't just put that in a car park. So what everyone thinks that Rolls-Royce is going to get that, take it all off and get to the grid. That's not what's going to happen. Rolls-Royce are actually developing a totally new kind of reactor. So they've not got the big one, they've not got the little one. We want one in the middle that sounds like both. And what people don't realise is they're developing a totally new system. So like what is in a nuclear submarine would probably work, power whatever 1,000 ohms, but you can't have it because you can't enrich uranium that much on land. Also, I don't know if you noticed, submarines are surrounded by water for cooling. So you need all that. And so you've got all the other infrastructure associated with cooling stuff. So again, another media one, we're going to take the reactor out of the submarine and bang it straight in the night. No, you're not. That's like saying we're going to get the reactor out of the satellite and stick it on the ground. No, you're not. So yeah, it looks great on telly with all the, and in the papers, all the mocked up CGI things while they're all going to look. But effectively, to get in that scale that's not a submarine, that's not quite a power station, the money you'll spend, you may as well go balls deep and have a big old nuclear power station. Not made by the French though, because they're crap. And they haven't got any to work. So like Hinkley Point doesn't work. That design doesn't work anywhere in Europe. I don't think they built one in Japan or something that doesn't work. They're just unproven technology. The technology advanced, they don't function. They've not quite cracked it yet, is as far as I'm led to believe. But there's a company, I think, in Korea that have built like nuclear reactors in Japan, Dubai. They've got about an 8-year lead time, but no one seems to want to buy them. We're obsessed with buying this Chinese, French thing, Hinkley Point, super new reactor that's going to do all this stuff. And I'm not against nuclear, I think it's the future, but it seems to be like we're buying the wrong designs off the wrong people, making the wrong promises. When in fact, I think the Korean firm have kicked out 6 of the I can't remember what the name of it is, but they've kicked out about 6 to 10 of those, all in about an 8-year period, all roughly on budget, all around the world. But you haven't heard of them, have you? It's the first time I've heard about that, isn't it? But that's a fact. So while we got the French building something at Hinkley that's unproven. So the one in France don't work, I believe, and the one at Hinkley don't work yet. But the one in France, they're trying to make it work and it won't work. The Hinkley one's not ready. But again, nuclear is the future. But we need to stick to proven working designs built by people that know what they're doing, rather than going, oh, let's come up with this radical new design, it's super clean to squeeze a bit more out of it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's that, like I say, I think it's that transition period where, you know,
energy's wild, mate. You can't do anything without it.
Well, it reminds me of all like I go back to the car thing again, because you see all these old trial videos where cars going down the road, and to protect pedestrians, there's like a big pillow that explodes on the
Yeah,
road.
yeah.
It's like all these things are talked about, they're mocked up, there's a decision made not to pursue that because it's just stupid or it doesn't work, it's too costly. But with something that's so important to a country and is life and death, if a hospital goes offline or an electric vehicle doesn't get to where it needs to be and it's an ambulance or it's a police car or whatever, all these sorts of things that are so important, the stakes are a lot higher with it, and it's worrying. It's worrying when we're in this transition period where we're not looking back at the old cars and going, oh god, that would have been interesting if that had come out. We're in that transition period where we're trying lots of different things, and I'm positive about it, but it might be because I don't know as much about it as you. But I think it's one of them where we have to try things to know what doesn't work, and hopefully we stumble across something that really does.
We can try things that you need to establish a base level of whatever you're doing before you start trying to experiment. That's the fact. I remember working. I knew I was in the reserves with a guy who worked at Stanley Oil Refinery, quite high up, and he always used to say, "This is an oil and gas man, yeah, through and through." And he always used to say, "Power's king," because we was in the party. We go, "Power's king, power's the king." I'm like thinking, "You import oil and gas, you're the king, really." And then I realised it's not, is it? Because to burn oil and gas or coal or make renewables, you need the energy in the first place to get the cycle around. It doesn't work without the other. So when I actually went to work at Stanley with, they make oil, like you can't make any oil without power. And it's this future, but you need to establish a good level of green-ish, cheap-ish electricity before you can start getting crazy experimentative. So if you want to start going crazy renewables and crazy wind and trying out new nuclear power stations or that, I think the solution is you've got to go to a company that make nuclear power stations, and the government have got to build a few of them, get them working, which is a problem itself in it. Get them working, go, right, we have got 40 years out of these and they'll provide the baseload. Now we can start looking at all the other stuff. And a nuke has to run constantly is the problem. That's the problem with nuclear, is it likes to run, it's on or it's off.
Yeah.
But then you have a bit of gas to take up the thing, because unfortunately at the minute, build as many wind turbines as you like. If it's dark and it's not windy, you think the gas power stations are going to just make you electricity when you want it. And the simple fact is, renewables aren't cheap because they have to be backed up by fossil.
Do you think the best, I'm just saying what's popped into my head as you've been talking, Jamie, because what you've said makes sense, but do you think the best approach is to try and get renewables onto domestic homes at the point of use, but keep the grid largely nuclear? And
I think the best policy would be to have a policy, to actually have one, because at the minute we've just got like Ed Miliband running around going wild, saying he's going to build 1 billion wind turbine or something, whilst he's getting an echo chamber of like 10 or 15 people who ain't got a clue. I think the best thing to do would be have some sort of like round table full of like well-rounded individual engineers from the electricity companies go, right, what should we do going forward? And then I think the room was that the Conservative government were quite pro-green, but I think they'd start to realise, as a lot of countries go, no, we can't, we're being too green too quick. We need to kick back a bit. Like all that gas they just found in Lincolnshire. Like, why don't we dig that up, use the North Sea gas, right, and just say, right, we're going to go on a 30, 40-year cycle, build another couple of gas power stations, build another couple of nukes, then we can really start experimenting. But unless we get the base load right, which can be stuck in 10 years' time with a load of solar and wind turbines, I don't know if you know, there's no inertia then. There is no inertia, there's no frequency from them. So you can't just have, you cannot have a grid. If you had a country that spanned the equator, that went all the way around the equator, yeah, so it's constantly in the sun, and you put a 400 or whatever kV system around it to distribute it all around the equator, because the equator's a strip of land, yeah? So you always got wind in that strip and you've always got sun. You can't have a grid because you've got no inertia, you've got no frequency. Frequency comes from spinning massive lumps of metal at 3,000 RPM with steam. But without the frequency, or if the frequency differs by 0.01, you start to get big problems. So you'll never have a grid that's renewable anyway. So that's a pipe dream. It can't happen because frequency exists.
I just wondered if more of the funding that we're spending on these big grid infrastructure projects around renewables would be better allocated towards actual homeowners, consumers, domestic residences, get as much of that as we can in terms of the load dropped through the renewables and keep it out of the grid side of things. I don't know.
Like someone at the weekend asked me about putting a battery in their house, I was like, I'll come round your house, I'll do some sort of energy monitoring for a couple of weeks, and then I'll say, oh, you're using round about, say my house was 8 to 12 kilowatts a day. So I had a 10 kilowatt battery. Yeah. So what we should then just go, how much wind is reasonable in the right places, build those wind turbines, which I think, to be fair, we've already built. Yeah. I think we've already built those wind turbines. Then how much solar could you put on domestic houses rather than paying wind farm companies £2 billion not to generate? So if you just went, right, tell you what, you're going to bang £2 billion worth of solar onto people's roofs, like, how much solar would you actually get for that? Like, could you not put
Depends who
£10
priced it.
on 20% of the house? Yeah.
I'd do the mother-in-law's.
There's circles, I think you get maybe a car park done for that. But £10 billion worth, £2 billion worth of solar on domestic houses, smaller scale, creates work for people like you, creates work for roofers, creates loads of work. Every solar and renewable project seems to want to make big companies loads of money. Whereas when you put on a house, the roofer gets some work. The other good thing is, and what should be incorporated is, the roofer gets some work. You probably insulate your roof while you're there. Save some energy that way, yeah? Get your roof repaired, get the panels on, all that good stuff. You get the local generation. Then when it needs maintaining, you get the roofer back in. You create a lot of work for that £2 million. We're spending £2 million on one huge solar farm. I've been on solar farms like 10 acres, 20 acres, run by 3 or 4 people. Whereas that much solar on roofs, with utilising all the existing wire and stuff, all right, DNO's wire's a bit dodgy, but it creates loads more work, keeps people in work, doesn't it? Whereas a solar farm is effectively just an empty, barren place where solar panels go to die. And also, we're waiting for that, aren't we? I've seen stacks of solar panels that need recycling, and I don't know where to get rid of them. So, how green is all that? But
I was just thinking of ways of getting rid of having to back up all that generation if it was put on people's houses and they were using it.
you'd have a lot of batteries.
Yeah, you would have, but you kind of spread that around, don't you? When people are using them every day rather than them being sat there as backup.
And it makes people think more local level, because people are like, we want to have, in London, they want to have these 15-minute cities, don't they? Like, you want every 15 minutes, so you've got to move around. All right, so why don't we put solar and battery more localised on people's roofs? Because then, now I've got a solar and battery in my house, I think. Shall I cook the oven meal tonight because my battery's full, or shall I cook the one that's cheaper? You don't encourage that kind of thinking, green thinking, by putting a solar farm in the middle of the countryside, no one can see it. Where it doesn't mean anything. On my house, every penny if I use the oven or the iron or the washing machine in line with what my solar does, I save money. It's a benefit to me. I'm more likely to do it. Sticking some solar farm, I'm afraid, on some piece of Lincolnshire mainly benefits out of town, out of the country investment firms, which is a problem with solar because they get the same money as gas.
Yeah, there is so many challenges, isn't it, with trying to, like we've said, go and change something that's been so ingrained into all the infrastructure we've put in place has all been designed around these massive points of generation.
Going down, yeah.
Slower, and then slower transmissions, and the whole like prosumer network where we're sending power here, there, and everywhere, backwards and forwards, and trying to run that on infrastructure that's never been designed for that is a massive headache for those that have to think about it. For us, as on the last almost peg of that run, it just seems like a bit of a challenge that others have to sort out. But when you think about it more generally across what the country has to sort out, there's a lot of challenges there of how do we go from where we were and where we want to get to, but have this bit in the middle, like I've said, of stability whilst we do try things out. I think, like you've mentioned, Jamie, about trying to secure that power so that we can experiment is really important, rather than experimenting at the jeopardy of not having that power.
Yeah, and also like the other thing to remember is that people forget about a lot of the time on this like infrastructure thing, like, oh, let's build some pylons, yeah, and all that, which people moan about later, because people moan about if you want to put a battery farm in an underground mine, someone will moan that it'll ruin their view. But if you say the National Grid was built with 10 times the capacity it's got now, and all the cables were big enough, yeah, and we could just put solar and wind and nuclear plants anywhere we want in the country, people always forget about the protection. So the whole system, like the fusing house, is protected. But it started off going from the big power stations down to substations, down to substations, down to substations, down to industry, down to your house. Yeah? All that protection was designed to go downhill. Now it needs to go both ways. So even if the National Grid's infrastructure cabling and switching was capable of dealing with all this, you've still got to go around and just every single protection relay or change it in the country, which in itself is a massive task. And people just forget about go, oh, there's power lines there. It's not the power lines can't take the power. It's that you've got to correct the protection for 15, 20, 50 miles around that to cater for the reverse flow stuff. Because some power lines are protected by going, at one end is this much energy goes in, at the other end this much energy comes out, and that's why they are protected. Differential switching, I think they're called differential protection relays. What goes in at one end must come out the other 55 miles away, same as an RCD. But if you want to stick a solar farm in the middle of that, you've got to upgrade the protection at each end, because it needs to know what's happening at each end, what's happening in the middle, what the ins and outs are to make decisions to turn those off if they're going forward. So that, you read the thing that went 6 bananas in this end, 6 bananas about that end, that's great. Now you've got to cater for loads of different connections and the protection on integrating, which is expensive. So yeah, there's all that to consider. The protection is just not there as well.
Yeah, it's
wild.
It is. It's a completely different perspective on what we see as kind of installers, and just driving around the country seeing a solar farm, thinking that's fantastic.
It was so much better if people just stopped chatting shit. Yeah, I'm afraid that's a simple thing. Yeah, if Oxford stopped doing the old, if a lot of the power people, to fear, not just Greg, stopped doing the old small nuclear reactors, putting data centres near power stations, all this rubbish, and actually spoke the facts about how the grid works and functions, or people bother to look, they'd go, oh right, that's why that is it? It'd be so much easier if they weren't spouting, or everyone has got every person is spouting what suits them. Greg wants to have a heat pump because he sells electricity. I'm sure his heat pump's not as efficient as some other people's, but that's allegedly, yeah. People who make EV chargers want to have EV chargers because they'll sell EV chargers, yeah. I'm independent. I go out and try and do my own independent research and look for people that do that as well. And then when you actually read up on it or speak to people that manage it, they'll just say, no, you just can't do that. But there's so much spiel being spat out by people who've got the finger in the pie that it's just all cloudy, see. And they're like, it's really important. Why don't no one care about infrastructure? Same with water. We've seen the water now, aren't we? We know they're dumping stuff in the rivers. To be fair, in the UK, most of the water's drinkable, yeah, but we know they start to put a lot of stuff in rivers that's got poo in it, basically. Why do you not think that's happening with the electricity grid? Because it is. That's what's coming. Blackouts are coming. I've said this for years now.
That's a record.
It's easy to,
mark my words.
It's easy to fall for a lot of that stuff in the news, because happy to admit, I'd assumed that wind turbines were shut down because they were producing too much power. So I've learned from you today, Jamie, that's not true. Fast. It's the speed that they're turning, and it's easy for consumers to hear that stuff on the news and fall into those traps, I think, of not thoroughly.
You've got a national grid. You can pretty much put, as long as heavy infrastructure near the 400 kV to all the 122, you can pretty much plonk anything where you want to plonk it. That's the way the national grid was designed to work. So yeah, that whole regional pricing, I've never heard such crap in my entire life. Like a flower's cheaper like a potato's cheaper in Lincolnshire because that's where they grow them. No, like
it's really interesting.
Then you get the old nationalisation. We should nationalise it.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's a good or a bad idea.
Yeah, this is why these sorts of conversations are important. Like, obviously, if, like you mentioned, if these conversations were happening more widely and we had these kind of debates about, right, well, we need to make sure that we've got, is it right that we need to back up every single watt of green energy that we generate with some sort of gas, or some sort of redundant system, so that if there is suddenly no wind or no sun or whatever, we can turn on this engine. Is there a way that we can do that better, or does that just have to be? And does that have to be a constant consideration when we're rolling out more of these renewables, or is there a way to reduce that? How do we reduce that? Is it impossible to reduce that? Having those conversations so that people can see the real challenges that are really the dirty side of renewables, really.
Well, the problem is I like renewables, like all the different technologies, yeah, but I find it really hard to find people in renewables that are willing to speak factually. Like going, say someone goes, we make solar stuff, but we admit that, let's do a heat pump, see this one, yeah? We will come and fit you a heat pump, yeah? So we'll come around your house, we'll size the radiators up, we'll put the pipework in, we'll fit you a heat pump, and it'll probably be more expensive for the electricity, but we think it's greener, yeah? But they want to sell you a heat pump. Whereas why does someone go, we'll come around your house first, we'll see if you can insulate your house better, as a thing. So there's not a lot of independent advice in the renewables trade. Everyone's plying stuff. But then when you do say something like the grid can't take it, you just get shot down because grids are typically used. Not a lot of people can not lie in the renewables game. Is it not at your guys' level, but at the higher you get up, there's a lot of people just chatting pure crap, coming out with absolute rubbish, and no one challenges them on it. And like, I would love to see Ed Miliband or any of the Green Levy or any of the government people that deal with energy sectors from this government or the last one sit in a room with a team of electrical engineers and get questioned without going, that's going to be difficult. Like, well, you better deal with it because I'll tell you when people will start talking about it, when there's rolling blackouts.
Yeah.
That's when they'll start getting really upset.
I think the challenge to that would be that a lot of MPs aren't experts in all their field. One minute they're health secretary, next they're transport secretary. It's about the team behind them, isn't it? It's about how good is that team behind that MP that is giving them that the team behind them have all of the right experience and qualifications. They don't maybe see the camera, but they're backing up that MP to make sure that they are being fed the right information. So to push back on the Ed Miliband thing is that I wouldn't expect him to be an absolute expert in every little element, but I would hope that the team behind him have consulted people which is the real challenge.
A really interesting thing to watch, and I say this all the time, and I speak about this when I've done it on the other podcast stuff. Yeah, Channel 4, probably about getting on for 10 years ago now, did a documentary, and the documentary was there was a series of events of a national grid goes into blackout. Yeah, the whole grid goes off, which is not we've got a lot of protection schemes to stop that, but it is feasible that something like that could happen. It's planned for. NISA and stuff will do things on it, yeah. But in this documentary, I cannot remember what it's called every time I speak about this, yeah, but I'll try and get it for the show notes, right? Sure, some people have seen it. And in that, they got independent advisors, like I'm talking proper independent advisors, not like government think tanks. They got the police in, the army in, the emergency service in. They sat in one room and goes, right, based on what you know about people, because the police know things about people that the fire brigade don't, yeah, let's develop this script with script writers. Obviously, it's all structured as script writers. And then the national grid goes into blackout. And what happens is at the start, people find it entertaining and fun, yeah? It's a bit exciting. Like if he was on the Costa Concordia when it went down, I'm sure for the first 10 seconds, that'd be the most exciting thing in the world until you realise you're about to drown because some blokes took it near some rocks to shot to a bird, yeah? Then in the next bit of that programme, it starts to get a bit more serious. And obviously what happens is immediately is crime starts. People start nicking things that they wouldn't normally nick, like food, fuel, all that kind of stuff. It then develops into like people nicking diesel. And I think in the end, someone batters someone with a baseball bat over a loaf of bread. But that is like over a period of a week. That's the way it would go. Without electricity, keeping the lights on, keeping you warm and that, society will literally break down. I'm not even, I know it sounds like a big thing, but if you say, say a town goes off, people start attacking each other in that town over commodities like bread, food and water. Because no water will come out the taps, no drainage will go away, no heat will come on. Nationally, I was saying this before, talking about people, I was talking about how many home backups you sell, how many full grid systems, yeah? If you've got a battery storage system that will keep your lights on during a power cut, or you've got a wood burner, my advice is at night, don't put your lights on and only put your wood burner on at night. Because if people see you've got light and there's a blackout and people see smoke coming out your chimney in the daytime, they will start knocking on your door for a bit of your heat. And honestly, that is how important electricity is. Society will literally break down without water, food, electricity, and now telecommunication rapidly. Within days, you'll see people getting tribal and cracking people's heads over a bit of bread or something like that. I don't think that might sound extreme for some people, but I honestly believe that's the case.
I think it's one of them where it seems like it's just absolutely ludicrous, but you don't have to look far in countries that have really unstable grids to see how important those sorts of that critical infrastructure is. Where you do get situations like that where people are, hospitals aren't able to run and all these different things where people just lose their minds over it. And
most hospitals got 48 hours, I'd say. 48 hours of grid.
Yeah.
And that's got to be any standby diesel generation you get in a healthcare or any kind of situation has to be diesel. Can't use gas because gas won't get pumped. In a national blackout, there won't be any gas pressure in the system. There won't be any way to use any of the other fan stuff. It's got to be tank diesel. And to have tank diesel in a generator, you have to run that generator every so many months, on load, to run it and energise it. So that costs money to do. I imagine if you fired up every standby diesel generator in the country, 50% of them are so badly maintained they won't come on. That's in hospitals, military facilities. I'd imagine 50% of those generators will probably cark it out after 24 hours at the most, if they even start up at all. The generators I see outside buildings, I've been doing a bit of work on some food distribution centres, and I've seen generators there now. Some of the sites, I've seen them running, but some of the generators look and think that won't start in a million years. So like even your hospital's like 40 hours later, with no electricity, oh, it's all right, we'll just send a tanker of diesel out. Well, how's that tanker going to get there when all the traffic lights are off, people's cars are dumped in the streets, and the place where the refinery it comes from has got no power? So yeah, it doesn't take long for it to break down.
That's why it's so important that the government do this right. If they're the ones leading on it, which it seems like they are, because they're the ones in the news talking about it all the time, they have to get it right, don't they? Because we don't want to end up...
Well, that's because electricity goes off, people get tribal for about 5 or 6 weeks. Then we'll start to get used to it, and we'll start to deal with the fact that the electricity's not on in the day for 4 or 5 hours. But like, do we want to go there? It's going to be very difficult. People will get used to it, and it will settle down, but the initial loss of electricity, if it happens, will be carnage.
So to kind of round this up then, what do you think, as an enthusiast in this and someone that's been in that, I think I know the answer to this, but I don't want to lead you on it. Do you think it's a money-based thing to start solving this problem, or do you think it's more of a plan to have a better plan for what we do, or do you think it's a bit of
the problem with government is it's a 4-year cycle, isn't it? When in fact, I'm not so sure, having not grown up with it, although some people from the 70s will tell you about like the blackout 70s, I'm not sure public ownership is a thing. Like British Rail was a joke, weren't it? I remember British Rail being a joke. The sandwiches were a joke. Like comedians would go on stage and do sketches about British Rail being so shite. Yeah. So that's a fact. We all seem to forget that under private ownership, the trains do run better, but they're not great. But they are better than British Rail. I think, to be fair, this electricity generating board were actually quite a well-maintained system because the people that ran it took a lot of pride in it. I think I do get that feeling from like old boys, from the Lecky boys, that there was a lot of people pulling the same way, but I don't know what it's like to work live. But I'm not sure public ownership is a solution. But should we not go, right, is there not a mechanism to go, you're one government, we're another, but why don't we get together and like have an independent review with people from each side and go, right, here's a 10-year plan for the electric? Because like anything with all this stuff, when the government start throwing money at stuff, it gets wasted, doesn't it? Quangos and whatnot and all that kind of thing. But
they do have a bit of history in trying to set these things up. I know I don't think they've actually set anything up as yet, but there was talk about doing similar things like that with the NHS because there's such a huge problem
of waste.
But also the problem can't be done in 4 or 5 years. It has to be over the next 15.
Yeah, it's got to be a lifetime. 25
you need to have that full plan in place so that basically every government that's after this one is following that plan that they've signed up to. They can probably change.
But your numbers are like I said earlier. 2030, we're going to be carbon neutral over here. Well, what's that even mean? Like, you tell me we're not going to use oil because every wind turbine's got 800 litres of oil in it, making it go around that needs change every 3 months. So then, when you've got a wind turbine like that, we're going to be carbon neutral. So we've got to dig oil up, mate. Just dig oil and transport to that wind turbine and empty that oil that's in there out and put new oil in. Otherwise, it won't work. So, like, is that carbon neutral? Is it? I don't know. I'm not quite sure that anyone knows where they're going with that.
Yeah, I think
it seems a big number. Like, it's not that far away. 2030.
Oh no, it's
like you're going to be busy. You've been a big. I mean, your office is pretty flush as it is. You're going to be in a flush office this time if you've got to do all this renewables by 2030. And I don't mean like 8:30 tonight. I mean the year 2030.
Yeah,
I can bring all my vans to charge them with Sam.
I don't know about that.
I'll never be out of work training if we're going to have a total. If we're going to be by 2030 totally green and clean, whatever. I'm never going to have to work, and I'll be just training people because we'll be training 4-year-olds to put in power cables if we're going to get it done by then. So yeah, but I think
it's a lot there.
If you look at the infrastructure projects that the government have been behind, you've got like HS2, which has been
carnage,
a bit of a disaster as they've changed leaders of one political party with different points of view, and then a whole new political government, different party in charge. And then you've got like the Channel Tunnel, which was probably a really big one.
That was private infrastructure.
Yeah, they did
private money that was.
Combination between the French and British
that was
private.
Probably the last. I mean, I weren't old enough to really get into it. From books, I think that was quite well run. Did it on budget?
I think that was on budget and nearly on time as well.
Concorde was obviously a French-British thing that went massive over budget. They refused to stop it. But the Channel Tunnel, I think, was quite a successful infrastructure project. The problem with infrastructure is, as well, is if you don't do it, I mean, I know HS2's been a shitstorm, right? But we're building something big. But then we started flaking out. We need to push on, because if we don't start building infrastructure and getting good at it, we'll never be good at it. Like the Japanese, like build railways. Like if it's 10 seconds late, no, I think it's like 3 seconds late. They start
Lose
crying.
their mind.
Man, don't they? But in this country, like, all right, HS2's a disaster. We put a load of money into it. Probably people are taking on left, right, and centre. But if we don't start doing that more, and if we're going to get private people to do stuff, we need to say, look, right, don't take the piss. Like, build it quite well, make it last, and take a reasonable profit, but don't take the piss. We have a lot of piss takers. That's what the problem with a lot of infrastructure we make is that everyone's like, oh, I'll have consultancies and all that. And until we get out of that thing, like I said, Central Electricity Generating Board, as far as I'm led to believe, everyone took a lot of pride in the work providing energy for the nation. We seem to have lost that pride with our engineering in the UK. That's a big problem.
Yeah.
With general stuff.
Yeah.
You go way off on a tangent, but that's a problem. Like, you guys take a lot of pride in the work you put people's ass, don't you? You put it on YouTube and that. How do you make everyone feel like that about all the work they do? And then maybe they want to go into government as engineers and advise them how to do it. But yeah, I'm afraid I've just come out to slag it off. I ain't got any solutions whatsoever.
No, but the thing I wanted to say, obviously people come to listen to this to probably just listen to us yarn on about solar panels and batteries and EV and all the rest of it. But I'm really glad we've had this conversation, because this is the serious side of the challenges that renewables face. And it's an industry that you're speaking just for myself, that I absolutely love. I do want to see be successful. But also, the only way to make it successful is not to shy away from all the problems that it faces. There will be people that will disagree with you, Jamie, on some of those points.
There will be people sending me things through the post after the podcast.
But the reality is, that conversation that drives that disagreement is exactly what needs to happen, because that's where you get to that middle ground where someone goes, okay, I don't agree with what you've said on that bit, but actually that bit's pretty good, and I've got the answer to the bit.
I think that,
so then you get to this middle ground,
isn't it?
when people are in echo chambers and silos, which is a little bit why we started this podcast, because people are only really talking to the people that they agree with, and heat pump installers aren't, and talking to solar installers and all this other thing. But on a wider level, where you've got more government-based things and more industry in general conversation that need to happen, you need to have those disagreements to create, and those conversations to create the actual path forward.
Conversation, let's get people, because air conditioning, people will quite happily put electricity to air conditioning to cool their room, won't they? But when it's a heat pump, they get all angry about it. They both work as technology in their own way, in the opposite end of the spectrum, but heat pumps are seen as wild out there, crazy pieces of madness that don't really work very well yet, I don't think. Whereas air conditioning, because it's popular, it's become very developed and got a lot better. But effectively now, like the heat pumps we're getting now are a bit shit, I think. Like the first internal combustion engine, I'm sure, was crazy. But that technology, people are sort of letting it in. People were naturally letting EVs in. People were naturally letting heat pumps in. It seems to me that when you start forcing it on people, that's when they get upset. Whereas if you let people decide for themselves about technology, by educating them about grids and stuff like that, which is all gone, they go, yeah, actually, the miles we do in our car, it'd be better if we had an EV. And then they go, we'll get one. Then Bob and Sue still go, oh, they've got an EV. Why you got that? Oh, it's loads cheaper than electric. And then you get that natural progression over maybe a couple of lifetimes, 50 years. But when it's being rammed down your throat, we've got to go green, we've got to go green, that's costing the country billions and stifling all our economics, it's a problem, in it. But when you look at it, every single problem that's going off in the UK at the minute is basically down to the electricity price. It's weird. It all comes in a massive circle, innit? It's all very tied in.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed that chat.
You cut me off now,
I'm not cutting you off. It's
like we've been 5 hours now.
I know you've got a long drive home.
You're going to edit this into about 15 minutes.
I've travelled up from Cambridge in an EV here, having to take 2 stops, and I've not eaten all day. So I'm looking forward.
Can't you get food where you can't charge? Is that
I could have done, but I was trying to avoid all the Burger Kings and McDonald's. I was trying to be good, and now I'm regretting my life choices. But I appreciate you coming, Jamie, and having a chat with us about this. It's been good to learn from you, because I had literally no idea about the wind turbine side of things. I just assumed what I'd seen on the news. I didn't really understand what the peaking gas generators were or any of that either. So it's good to learn from someone who has got that knowledge. So thanks for coming.
I got the knowledge, by the way. Just before I add, I'll send you a list of people, but there's loads of good people on Twitter that are doing this day and out, like Engineer London, Kathleen Porter.
I'll drop the links in.
Voldemort, something like that. There's quite a few on LinkedIn as well doing the same thing. There's loads of people on LinkedIn that are talking about energy markets and consumption. You find them. If you look on marketing, a lot of them there. And then there is also There's a few of them. I'll send them over because there's all the sites like GridWatch, Grid Templar. They'll tell you the energy mix at any time, what's on, what's off. There's websites that list what power station run on what day. You'll follow that out. So there's plenty out there to look at. It's not like it's secret.
I'll pop it in the show notes for anyone who's watching. Is there anything you'd want to add, Sam, before?
No, just a massive thanks for coming and destroying the renewables industry for us. No, but yeah, really, genuinely, thank you for coming on.
Well, I live in your car park now, so it's more efficient for me to be here than it is to be at home. So I've been here longer.
Yeah. No, well, having those conversations is great, and I really enjoyed learning, like Mark said, about all those extra little bits and putting back into my mind those arguments and thinking, okay, that's actually a really good point. And that's exactly like I've just mentioned, what needs to happen to work out the way forward. I do think that renewables are the way forward, but it's got to be rolled out in a way that doesn't jeopardize, people's safety, and that we're using the public money as best we can to deliver the best projects. So we've done a very, very small part of trying to raise that conversation.
I just want to add as well that all this is made out of oil. All this fake photos is made out of oil. So
it's a wild living green wall. We water it every day.
You can't see the irrigation system behind it.
No, thank you all for watching. And again, thanks for Jamie for coming in to chat with us. If you've got any questions about anything we've discussed, please do drop them in as always. Don't forget, we'll be at the Installer Show on the 24th to the 26th of June on our own little stand. So if you're planning a trip out to come and see any of the technologies out there or ask us any questions, get yourselves down and come and say hello. And otherwise, we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.